The UFC is at it again, putting on an absolute fucking banger from the UFC Apex, headlined by none other but Erin Blanchfield and Macy Barber. Not a whole lot to say about that. We could have at least gotten a Mackenzie Dern main event. But no, we've got Macy Barber and Erin Blanchfield. I thought that I remember Dana White saying at some point last year that the Apex was going to be obsolete very soon, and that, as the places have opened up, we're going to continue to go to all these places and yada, yada, yada. The Apex isn't going to be a thing anymore. Here we are, midway through 2025, still putting on very mids cards at the Apex. It makes no fucking sense. Some of the best fights that we've had in the last couple of years have taken place in front of a crowd of less than 100 people at the Apex. Top one that comes to mind, Dan Hooker, Dustin Poirier. That fight was in the Apex. Could you imagine if it was in front of a sold-out arena? It would have been bonkers. But I digress. So, starting off this card with a 30-minute bathroom break, to be real with you. We have Ryan Dos Santos versus Alice Ardelane. I'm pretty sure Alice Ardelane is like almost 40. So this is like a classic new, younger up-and-comer, so to speak, who's 14-8, going against someone who kind of just got their career started at 33. I'm pretty sure Dos Santos is like 26 or something, 29. So 33 versus 29. Not that makes like a huge difference, but both of these women are not a whole lot to write home about. The only, in my opinion, the only factor in this is going to be the size. I think Alice may kind of just be more physical and stronger than Dos Santos, but I'm gonna give this one to Dos Santos. I'm not gonna sit here and act like I know a ton about either one of these, and I'm not about to sit here and go back and watch their last fights to make a prediction here, because to be honest with you, I could really give a fuck about either one of these. There's no shot that either one of these women are going to work their way up in the strawweight division. We're not going to see Dos Santos or Alice anywhere near the top in the strawweight division. But we're probably going to get a decision by Dos Santos. Moving on, Markel Moderos and Bolaja Aki. This is going to be a pretty fun scrap. Initial thoughts is I'm leaning towards Markel. Markel's super well-rounded. This is, so not saying that this is a bad thing, but you would have kind of expected Markel to get Austin Hubbard out of there, but ended up winning a split decision. I don't necessarily think that it was like the closest split decision, if I remember correctly. Like, it wasn't, I thought it was a UD, but you would have kind of expected someone like Markel that's, in my opinion, going to be, if he gets past this test, he's going to be up there for the younger prospects within the lightweight division. And, the lightweight division is stacked and very tough, so. But yeah, very well-rounded for Markel. I think he's really good in the clinch. He's got decent wrestling. And I think that the main issue here, very similar to the first fight, is going to be physicality. Bolaji might have a little bit of an edge physically in this fight, but I don't really see this fight going to the ground or against the fence, and Markel not doing well in those positions. Not saying that Okai is, a slouch on the ground or a slouch in the wrestling department, but from what we've seen with Markel, like, he's pretty well rounded. Like, I'd have confidence that he's going to do pretty well wherever this fight goes. But I'm gonna go ahead and take Medeiros in this one. I think it's probably gonna be a round 1 or round 2 finish. I don't think we're gonna go to the judges' scorecards for this one. Moving on, Jordan Levitt and Kurt Hollowball. This is honestly kind of a fun matchup. Jordan Levitt is, his jiu-jitsu is kind of his thing, his shtick. And Kurt Hollowball is tough as nails and is a pretty scrappy fighter. Got good stand-up, good power. He's got good jiu-jitsu as well. Plays very, very well off his back, especially for the lightweight division. I feel like he's one of the more active guys off his back when he gets put there. But he's pretty tough to take down. And we've seen Jordan Levitt. He's like the classic jiu-jitsu guy that has lacked striking for quite a while now and seems to just not be developing it. We see him start getting tagged up and start taking shots from really far out. And then he starts getting caught on his way in with the sloppy takedown attempts. And you see him revert to it. Once he starts getting tagged up, you can bet your house on the fact that Levitt is going to start taking some really sloppy shots. Double legs from fucking 5 feet out, no setups, not behind the punch, nothing, just shooting in. And you're not going to be able to do that on Kurt. I would assume that Kurt's probably going to put a pretty nasty beating on Jordan Levitt. Jordan Levitt either does, his fights go one of two ways. He either takes you down and does his little his thing and then twerks on you and makes it, salt in the fucking wound, or he tries to implement his game plan, gets it shut down, and then looks really out of place, like a fish out of water. Like, you can really tell when he gets matched up against a good striker and his takedowns aren't working. You can tell he gets very uncomfortable very quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick Kurt Hollowball. I just think he's more of a dog, and if this fight becomes more of like a scrap or a little nastier, I could see, Kurt Hollowball doing a lot more damage for sure. I could see him busting up Levitt pretty good in this fight. So I'm gonna go like a late round 1, early round 2 TKO with Kurt Hollowball. Cash in on an underdog. Kind of weird he's an underdog, but be a good underdog to cash in on. All right, Andreas Gustafsson and Trevin Giles, this Swedish monster. He's fucking huge. I don't know why they don't have a picture of him, but fuck, he's huge, big boy. Looks like Prison Mike. And he's one of the first, like, I feel like we haven't seen any Swedish fighters in a while. But you see that last name, you know what's up. This is a catch weight. I'm pretty sure Trevin Giles is taking this fight on short notice. I don't know if this is the kind of guy you want to take a short notice fight against, even though Trevin Giles, I'm pretty sure, has taken a myriad of late notice fights. I'm pretty sure this Carlos Prates fight was late notice. But Trevin Giles is on a 3-fight skid. He's one of those guys that I feel like he had a lot of potential. But I think he works, he's like a full-time cop or some shit on the side. So, like, how much can you really put into this sport if you're working, part-time or full-time at this level? you hear it a lot when young fighters or guys come up, right, like when they're first getting into the UFC. A lot of them have jobs that they're still doing while they're training, but then they get a couple wins under their belt, maybe a performance bonus or a fight of the night bonus, and then they quit their job and they solely focus on MMA. And we see it, like their skill development is rapid. But Trevin Giles, I guess, just never got there. He's 32. He's not saying he's old by any means, but if you're not starting to make a push in your early to mid 30s, it's not going to happen later on. But he's on a 3-fight skid here. 2 out of his last 3, he's been finished. And all these guys are tough. Like we just saw Mike Malott perform really well on that Canadian card. Carlos Prates just fought for a title contender elimination fight with Machado Gary, Gabriel Bonfim, very legit. So like we've seen him go against some pretty high level guys in his last 3 fights, but if he doesn't win this fight against Andres, I could pretty much guarantee Trevin Giles is going to get cut, and that might be why he took this fight. Who knows? Maybe he's trying to show his worth or something to the UFC now that he's on a 3-fight skid, but not a whole lot of confidence in Trevin Giles in this one. I could see this going one of 2 ways: very early finish for Andres or a decision. But I'm gonna go round two finish for Andres. I wish I had a picture of this guy for you guys. I mean, he's just a fucking... looks like he just busted out of a prison. Let's see if I can find him. Andres Gustafsson. Let's see. Here we go. Look at this motherfucker. That guy looks like he fucking shanked a couple people in prison. Definitely, definitely a problem. 11-2, 8 TKOs, 2 subs, so he's well-rounded. It's not like Trevin Giles is going to be able to get this very easily to the ground, and if he gets to the ground, I'm not seeing him doing anything substantial. So I think we're very likely going to see Trevin Giles cut from the UFC promotion after this. So moving on, Ketlin Vieira versus Macy Chiasson. Ketlin Vieira was involved in one of the weirdest fights recently with Miesha Tate and made Miesha Tate look like Ketlin Vieira was the one that, Cupcake came back and showed that she still had it, right? And then went to a UD with Kayla Harrison. But Macy, kind of a surging prospect. Very well-rounded. Very well-rounded. Hasn't really strung together like super consistent wins, but she is on a two fight win streak. But this fight is 100% going to go to the ground at some point. They're both of them have good jiu-jitsu. I think Macy's boxing is going to be a little bit more crisp than Ketlin. And power-wise, I think they've both got pretty decent power for bantamweights. I think both of them have, TKO finishes. But I 100% see this fight going to the ground, and it could be finished there for sure. I think Caitlin Vieira is most likely going to get peppered a little bit on the feet, and then she's going to start shooting takedowns. I assume she's most likely going to get one. But I think Macy is probably going to be edging this one out. Women's fights are sometimes the hardest to pick, but I'm going to go ahead and say this is going to be either a submission win for one of these cats or a decision. I'm going to go Macy by decision, but we could very well see a submission finish in this fight, because I do think we're gonna see a decent bit of this up against the cage and probably in the clinch and ultimately ending up on the canvas. Moving on, Jafel Filho and Alan Nascimento. This is gonna be a really fun scrap, I think, in the flyweight division. Jafel, most notably, almost beat Mokaev. He had that really deep knee bar on Mokaev that Mokaev just ate, didn't tap, and ended up taking Jafel's back after the submission attempt and submitted him. But I don't know if you guys remember that knee bar against Mokaev, but nasty. I mean, it was as nasty of a knee bar as you're going to see without someone's knee just completely exploding. And just like, it was wildly impressive that Mokaev didn't tap and then turned around and subbed him. But up until that point, I thought he was doing very well against Mokaev. Mokaev is top of the food chain. And then Alan Nascimento hasn't fought in quite a while. It's been over 2 years since he fought, and won against Carlos Hernandez. Lost to Tamir Ulanbekov. Lost to Paiva. That must have been before Paiva moved up to bantamweight. But fights out of shoot boxing with Dubronx, and he's a jiu-jitsu guy. Very, very dangerous on the ground. 15 subs, so 15 out of his 20 wins have come by submission. And then we saw Jafel, like, he's got very good submission and very good jiu-jitsu. We saw that against Mokaev, and we've seen it in his other fights too. His last few fights have all been subs. So this fight is undoubtedly going to go to the mat. Undoubtedly. There's absolutely no chance that this stays a striking only match. I think we're going to see some very, very fun exchanges jiu-jitsu wise. And they have some different styles, honestly, once it gets to the ground. This is honestly, in my opinion, one of the harder fights to pick for this weekend. But I am going to go with Jafil. I think the time off may play a little bit of a factor here. I may be just blowing smoke, but I think we're going to see a submission. Not a chance that this stays on the feet. But I think we're going to see a round 2, maybe a round 3 sub. I think Allen is good enough in the grappling department where he's going to be able to defend early. But if he gets tired, which we've seen before, if he gets tired, I could see a late submission finish. So I think Jafel is going to get it done. Another underdog. If you want to parlay a couple underdogs, I think there's a chance to definitely make some good money this weekend. Moving on, Dusko Todorovic and Zachary Reese. Dusko, honestly, when he first came into the UFC, I thought that he was going to be like an actual prospect, but he's lost a lot of steam. last fight that he won in the last 3 years is against Jordan Wright. And I don't think that he's going to be able to handle the pressure of Zachary Reese. Zachary Reese is a big boy for the middleweight division. Big boy. And I just... He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage. 3-inch height advantage. You can just tell from their body types. Like, Zachary Reese is a middleweight, and he moves really well as a middleweight. Dusko, in my opinion, is probably a light heavyweight. He's fucking huge. He just doesn't look like he should be in the middleweight division. It's a little odd, but again, I thought that he was gonna be something, and then now I think he's just hit his ceiling, and Zachary Reese is gonna be way too much to handle. I think we're gonna see a very early TKO here. I think most likely going to be in the first round. I would say before the first 3 minutes, if you want to clock that in. Zachary Reese by TKO within the first 3 minutes of the fight. And then we're probably going to see Dusko either get released, or they'll give him one, someone in their debut, or one last hoorah, and then we'll probably see him get cut. But I think Zachary Reese is gonna put a beating on him, get him out of there very early. All right, Dustin Jacoby and Bruno Lopez. I just want to point something out here. Bruno Lopez is the oldest looking 32-year-old I have ever seen in my life. Like, he looks like he's seen some shit. If you'd have told me this guy was 43, I would have said, absolutely. I see it. He's 32. When I saw this guy for the first time, I was like, are they going to sign this guy on the Contender Series? Which was a year ago. So he was 31. But I didn't know he was 31. When I first saw him, I was like, oh my God, they've got a 40-year-old on the Contender Series. But he's got pretty decent power. We've seen him have the ability to stop a fight early. But Dustin Jacoby is the gatekeeper of all gatekeepers in the light heavyweight division. I think he's very underrated and slept on. I think he's tough as shit. He's got great durability. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on Dustin Jacoby. Lost to Dominic Reyes 2.0 and lost to Alonzo Menafield. Came off a nasty TKO on Victor Petrino. But like, he's a tough guy to get out of there. Very tough. And I don't think that Bruno Lopez is going to be able to scratch this one out. I think Dustin Jacoby is going to... The question is it going to be a finish or a decision? I think it's going to be a TKO. I could see Dustin Jacoby getting this up against the fence, working in the clinch. Dustin's got a very, very strong presence in the clinch. His ability to turn it dirty when you're in like a close distance with him is really good. He's got vicious elbows. He almost reminds me of like a Matt Brown kind of gritty kind of style. So I think if he can get the fight there and close the distance, we're probably going to see him put a nasty beating on Bruno Lopez, cut him up a little bit, probably get him out of there. So I'm going to go Dustin Jacoby TKO. I know I'm calling a lot of TKOs and finishes on this card, but honestly, I do think that there's going to be quite a few with the matchups that we've got. Onward. Billy Ray Goff and Ramiz Brahimaj. So this is going to be a pretty good scrap as well. I think we're most likely going to see a stand-up fight here. Billy Ray, 9-3. All of his finishes are by TKO, or all of his wins are by TKO. Very few decisions. So he's always put on a pretty fun fight. Cage Warrior champion, or CES, sorry, not Cage Warrior. Sorry, I can't fucking read. And he's 2 fights in to his UFC career. Lost one, won one. Had a pretty tough fight against Waters, but this is another tough one to call. I think they're going to be pretty well matched. Here's the deal, though. Mickey Gall, at one point, I'd say maybe 3-4 years ago, Mickey Gall was, I thought, a pretty good contender. He was putting together a pretty decent streak at one point, very close to like the COVID time. But now he's just washed. He can't put anything together. He shows a very small streak of oh my god, he's still got it, and then gets fucking knocked out 1 minute later. So only reason I bring this up is because if Ramiz did not get the gift of Mickey Gall in matchmaking last year, he would be 1-3 in his last 4. So not saying that means a lot, but we see this a lot, right? Where this guy was, I'm almost positive he was like 9-1 before he got into the UFC. So he had 2 losses before he got in the UFC, right? He's fighting in LFA, put together a very impressive streak on the what looks to be, regional scene, comes into a bigger promotion, doesn't really string together anything impressive as far as like a win streak goes, and then comes into the UFC and has the same problem. And we see that, like, guys go on tears in a regional scene, they do kind of well, and then they get into a bigger promotion and they struggle. They struggle. And I think that what we're seeing here is another one of those cases. And that's what makes this fight a little hard to predict, is you've got no consistency whatsoever in Ramiz, but when he does win, he looks very good. And then you got Billy Ray, who's pretty early on in his career in the UFC as well. I'm going to go with Billy Ray. I think we're probably going to see a TKO with 7 of his 9 wins coming from stoppages. I'd say we're in for another stoppage here. Again, I know I'm calling for a lot of stoppages on this card, but the matchmaking is, even though this is, as far as names go, there's not a lot of draws, the matchmaking is good on this card. It's really good. We've got a lot of interesting matchups, and this is one of those. I'm going to go Billy Ray Goff. TKO. Onward. Matus Gamrot and Ludovic Klein. This is a weird one. I think Matus is way more well-rounded. I want to say that Matus has, Gamrot's gas tank is way better than Klein's. We've seen Klein gas out. We've seen it. But he's on an impressive streak here. Last time he lost was against Nate Landwehr, which that was the fight that we really saw him gas out and get subbed. But I think it's hilarious that his nickname is Mr. Highlight, and he's only got 2 finishes in his 10-fight UFC career. But he's got a win over Ignacio Bahamondes, which is he's a very talented up-and-coming prospect, against AJ Cunningham, against Thiago Moises, who's kind of not in his prime anymore. And then he damn near, if you guys remember, Roosevelt Roberts is the guy that got spinning wheel kick TKO'd by Ignacio Bahamondes. And he was only in the UFC for a few fights. He didn't do very well. But he got cut, and then I'm almost positive they brought him back. Let me make sure I'm not spouting out of my ass here. Yes, okay. So, this was when Roosevelt came back. Let me back to Klein. There we go. This is when Roosevelt Roberts came back from his hiatus in the UFC, and Klein barely squeaked out a dub. Like there was definitely some sketchiness in that. I thought that was more of a split decision. I didn't necessarily think it was a UD, but barely, in my opinion, got it done over a unskilled Roosevelt Roberts. And I just don't think that Klein has the experience that Gamrot does. Gamrot has fought some big names. Dan Hooker. He's fought, I believe he's fought Armin. Yep, fought Armin. Beat Armin. He got rocked against Armin. Lost to Beneil Dariush, which is a weird one. And like I said, lost to Dan Hooker. Got rocked against RDA. Showed some grit. TKO'd Fazeev. Won against Jalen Turner. Like, he's had some very impressive wins in the UFC and had some notable names that he's beat. Whereas Ludovic Klein, for as big of a streak and how many wins he has, there's not really an opponent there to speak to. AJ Cunningham, maybe, I guess. I don't know. But I think Gamrot is way more well-rounded. Ludovic Klein might be a little bit crisper of a boxer, but I think in MMA, like kickboxing-wise, Gamrot's got better leg kicks. He mixes it up a little bit better. I think we're going to see some wrestling from Gamrot. But I could see this being a decision for Gamrot. Part of me wants to say we're going to see a finish in this one, and it's very well possible, but I feel like I've been calling out a lot of finishes on this one, so I'm going to, like, my gut is telling me there's going to be a finish in this one, but I can't envision what it's going to be. Because I don't think Klein's going to knock out Gamrot. I think Gamrot's going to do what he needs to do to mitigate the distance, and he's got a pretty good reach advantage, or a pretty good height advantage here, but a little bit of a disadvantage in reach. But I think he's going to be very aware of that fact. He's going to manage distance well. So I'm going to go with Gamrot. And then the main event. We still have main events like this in 2025. It's wild. Absolutely wild. But at least it's not another Mackenzie Dern main event. That's all I can say. I know I wasn't the only one getting tired of those. We're probably not done. We'll probably see a fucking Angela Hill main event at some point, or which I'm pretty sure she retired after her last fight. But we could still see a fucking Angela Hill main event, or a Mackenzie Dern main event, or a Jessica Andrade. Maybe not now, but you know what I'm saying. It's crazy that we have Apex main event cards like this in 2025. I know they have to get all their fighters, their 3 fights for the year that they're contracted to give them. And they got to throw, BS cards out every once in a while, but least switch these two. Like, this starts at 9 o'clock. It's going to be damn near 1 a.m. before these two get in the octagon. You're telling me that I got to stay up till 1 a.m. to watch this shit? Anyways, Erin Blanchfield, very talented. I think as far as like women's fighting goes, like Macy Barber and Erin Blanchfield are definitely top of like cream of the crop right now for up and coming prospects. This kind of speaks for itself here. It really does. Last fight, she lost against Manon Fiorot, and Manon is, she just got worked by Shevchenko, but Manon put together a pretty good streak there for a minute and got some good wins. So, I mean, if you're wanting to fight for the title, probably should have won this fight. Beat Rose Namajunas by unanimous decision. That was a pretty boring fight. And Macy Barber, I think, is a little bit more. I think Macy Barber is a little bit more athletic. I think Erin Blanchfield looks a little awkward on the feet when she throws her punches. She looks very similar, I think, to Mackenzie Dern, like very upright and like just not very athletic looking. Macy Barber, in my opinion, is more athletic. She looks like she's more comfortable on the ground. Obviously, Blanchfield is more of a BJJ kind of fighter, but Macy Barber also has good BJJ. Or she can at least hold her own and has submission threats. So I think here's how this main event is going to go. Macy Barber is going to have the advantage on the feet. She is going to tag up Erin Blanchfield. We are going to see Erin Blanchfield shoot for takedowns. Will Erin Blanchfield be able to get this to the ground? I don't know. But if Erin Blanchfield can get it to the ground, we could see a lot of control time. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of damage being dealt, but Macy Barber is going to tag her on the feet. And then we're going to see takedowns being shot. If Macy can stuff the takedowns and keep the fight standing, I think we're going to see a TKO stoppage. I could see a sloppy takedown, a heavy sprawl by Barber, heavy hips, kind of falling into like a top half guard position and potentially finishing the fight from there. Macy Barber is one of the fighters, in my opinion, that does try to get the fight, like to stop the fight when she gets it to the ground. She's not going to do the body head bullshit that we see. So I'm going to go with Macy Barber in this one. I think she's going to get it done via stoppage, maybe a TKO. So moral of the story is, if you want to put in a parlay this weekend, this is a good weekend to do it, because there's some really, really good underdogs that we could pick. We got Macy Barber in the main event. We got Jaffel. We got Kurt Hollaball. We got Markel Medeiros. So there's a couple underdogs that I think we have a really good shot of hitting this weekend. This one's probably gonna be the sketchiest one to take if you're gonna take an underdog bet this weekend. But like I said, decent bit of underdogs that you could take, parlay them together, make a decent bit of money if they pan out. But overall, for an Apex card with a Erin Blanchfield Macy Barber main event, I think we've got a pretty decent card. I think matchmaking is really solid. Again, there's not a lot of big names on this card, but the matchmakers did a really good job stylistically making these matchups. So I think we're going to see an exciting night of fights and a good handful of finishes. But we'll see how it shakes out. I'll be dropping a full card recap on Saturday night / early Sunday morning, depending on when this fight ends, when this card ends, and when I can get one recorded. But let me know your thoughts below on who is going to take home the dub in the main event, or any of the other interesting fights that you like on this card. But appreciate you stopping by. We'll catch you in the next one. Peace.